Good morning, collective. I love you. If no one's told you, you need to hear that. It's an awesome day. Spirit's giving me a whole bunch of stuff. If it's like scattered, I'm really sorry because I just wrote it down and I can't even read my own writing. But this is a baptism by fire. And collective, I know you know what that means, because when you've been baptized by fire, you've been baptized by events in your life that kind of forced you to surrender, right? Because whatever you were doing was not working. However you were living wasn't working, and there came a point where it was just this baptism of fire where things just transformed, and you started making different choices and going different ways, and it worked. But in Luke, this is Luke 3, verse 13, well, verse 12 and 13. So the disciples are asking Jesus, they're trying to baptize these people. And it says, Luke chapter 3, verse 13, and he said unto them, exact no more than which is appointed you. So if you feel overwhelmed, like I was feeling really overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a lot more than what I signed up for. It's only going to be like what you specifically are appointed for. So kind of break it down a little bit, because he's not asking more than what you can deliver, just you, right? I had a past life, well, it wasn't a past life reading, but 20 years ago I had this reading done from this tarot card reader. At the time I was really into astrology, so I didn't really do tarot. But she says to me, in your past life you died with a group. You did not die an individual death. Like you weren't, I died with my group. And that really resonates to me now when I think about that, because you are my witnesses, collective, that I want to die for a cause or something greater than just this vessel, right? And I feel like that's what this is, because we're pissing people off using signs and symbols and source to all these religious people because, oh, that's so non-traditional, right? I'm going to tell you something. I have been around people that were raised in a certain religion for years, and it just became like, autopilot for them. And then I've met people that were baptized at like age 30, and they are more in love with the Word of God or their source of light than people that have their whole life been just drowned in it. Because it was probably that moment that they realized what I'm doing isn't working, and there comes that baptism by fire, and everything just clicks. It's like that lightning bolt, right? Where it's just how God wants it. So whatever you choose, like if you've been raised in some sort of religious, that's great. But the point is that vibration has to be really, really high in order to defeat this enemy, because I've talked about like weapons that we cannot use traditional weapons. We're using spiritual weapons right now. And in Jeremiah, I found this morning, 51:20, it talks about how God says people are my hammer and my weapons. So God uses your voice, as the weapons. And of course, we also know Jeremiah has that famous quote about no weapons formed against you will prosper. I believe if you use the right weapons, that's where your protection is. That's where your protection lies, because you're not picking up knives and guns and things like that. You're picking up things that God has appointed you. Even when I formulate like this Revelations battle and I'm an angel and I'm helping him out, he's not letting me pick up like guns and knives. I have like a bow and arrow. I have like things that are or like David and Goliath, the slingshot. I have things that will impact somebody, but shock them into like, oh, okay, obviously what I'm doing is wrong kind of thing, but it's not going to kill them or destroy them kind of thing. It's more like I'm gonna hit you with these truths. I'm gonna hit you with little bits of them until that moment of the clarity. And that Ace of Swords in this deck is that gift of clarity. It's the gift of clarity when you draw that Ace of Swords, because that's what we all want, right? Is, oh, it makes so much sense now. It's all so clear. a lot of this is about power. We know that. I have never felt so powerless in my life than, moments in time where I had no voice. So I feel more powerful even though there's nothing like physically around me to demonstrate that. But my voice and the I am is stronger, and that's your individual power. So yeah, I wasn't raised in a home with religion. I wasn't raised in a home where, this is what we're going to do on Sundays and blah, blah, blah. My dad was Baptist, my mom was Catholic, so it was kind of like, well, that just kind of canceled each other out, so we'll just let her pick what she wants. Well, what it ended up doing was creating this wandering person. And all throughout, like, my different meeting people or going places, there'd be some random person that would come up to me and say, you have a white light around you. I'd be like, what? Or they would say really weird things like that to me, like, oh, your death gifted you life. And I'm like, what? And then I think about it, well, death did gift me life. Life is continual, right? But I feel like for some of us, we've shown up there in heaven and God's looking at his watch going, what are you doing? Why are you here? Like, you came to the party a little early, we're going to send you back down. So, it's God's timing and no one can control that. That's just what it is. So, I was just doing what happened, hey, God, here I am. And he's like, no, you're going back down there. So, it's all good. I really think you should look at the 7th house in your chart, because the 7th house are your relationships. And those are shifting right now, right? With all this what to keep and what to throw away. 7th house in my natal chart had Pluto, which is all about transformation and death and rebirth. So all up until this point has been about people that probably shouldn't have been in my life maybe, or needed to be transformed in some way, because it wasn't my group. My 7th house, that's the only planet I had in there, right? It was Pluto. Oh, thanks. But the ascension chart, if you look at that one, I have Venus. So I really love that. And I feel like this being part of the collective fits that too, because it's such a loving planet, right? So read that, because that's where the sun sets, in the 7th house. That's where your sun is setting. And if you think about it, when you lay down at night or go to sleep at night, that's all 7th house stuff. Like whatever's surrounding you when you go to bed at night, that's all an indicate of what your 7th house has gifted you. So if you go to bed at night and you don't have pets or people, or you just have the book and the TV, and look at your 7th house and you'll see why. And there might be some answers in there spiritually too, to accept things that you don't understand or, maybe want answers for. So yeah, that's where the sun sets, is that 7th house. But yeah, it's all this baptism by fire right now. I was baptized when I was in my 20s. I went to this Church of Christ, and I've been to a lot of churches, but this particular church didn't use instruments. It was all a cappella singing, and there was just something so in stereo or powerful about just your voice. And they would sing these hymns, and it was almost I can't even explain it. It's kind of like being in a haunted house, where you just you could hear a pin drop kind of thing, because you realize this is significant. Something about being here is significant. You didn't want to mess it up, and it wasn't deja vu, but you just realize, okay, this is a poignant part of my life. And that's when I kind of surrendered and realized, what I'm doing isn't really working. I'm not really just this wandering daughter, out in the world. And I got baptized. And the feeling when you get baptized as an adult is so kick-ass, because you're like a little kid again. Everything's you have no resentment, no grudges, you have no burdens. It's not heavy anymore. And I just remember I was married, and my husband actually at the time was baptized with me. And I remember just being two little kids afterwards, oh my God, this is so great, because it was the tabula rasa, where you're a blank slate, that Latin term for just blank slate. Okay, I don't have any of this other crap to worry about. It's just me, and it's having good karma. Just all of a sudden you just had all this good karma, and everything you did was so blessed. And that's how I fell in love with God. you know, because I thought, this is so weird. And I wasn't on drugs or anything. It was just like, it was just the singing and led me to the water. And all of a sudden it was like, I have a new life. I have freedom. So, some things to think about. What else did I have? Yeah, so yeah, your weapons are going to protect you if you use the right ones. This baptism by fire, probably for a lot of people right now, is not very comfortable, because they have to take responsibility for, this is how I got here, right? But just know that God knew that, and that's why we have these different things to kind of pull us out and reform us and transcend a lot of garbage to get to where we need to go. So, very first card, boom, okay. So we know this guy is going to deliver some truth. He's coming in pretty fast. That's a good sign, right? He's going to deliver you some news, right? We hope so, collective. And this is what's crossing him. It looks like stable news. Looks like stable. It could be erratic. It could be like unsettling. That's the word I'm looking for. This could be unsettling, but at the same time, bring you some stability, which is kind of what you're after, right? Because you fought this fight and you're kind of taking a step back and thinking, okay, now I've acquired some things. How do you want me to use them, right? So that's part of what this is. You are unconscious of, oh, yeah. So God is giving you this gift of clarity, even though you don't realize it. Maybe you're not tuned into that. This is the unconscious position of this reading. So he may not be giving you that consciously, but unconsciously you realize there's some clarity. There's a lot of clarity coming in, which is what you need, right? That'd be awesome. And then you have this in the conscious. In the conscious point of this reading, you know that there's decisions being made, sides being heard, okay? And you're just here. Yo, if you want to hear my side, great. If you don't need to, great. But that's where we're at with that. So that's up here in the physical, in the 3D. Now, you're moving away from this because you put a lot of studying and reflection time, you know, looking back on things in your life, how things turned out. But it's all starting to make sense. And I think the Hermit allowed you to do that, right? Because when you get this subconscious kind of eating at you about how, oh yeah, there wasn't all, you can think back to all those moments like, that makes sense now. That makes sense now. I was by myself when that happened and no one was there. That makes sense now, right? And don't you love God for doing that? When all this stuff happens and then when you get a moment to breathe and you're like, oh my God, like that totally makes sense now. So that's where you were. But you were headed, and I kind of like being in this place, to tell you the truth, because there's a lot of shit to think about. But you were headed toward this, and this is a collaboration. This is with your group, okay? This is with, this is good. This isn't with karmics. See, like I spray this black stuff on my head for my gray hair, and then I get it all over my face. Anyway, so you're going to be collaborating with people, and this looks like a good collaboration because they're shining the light on all the things that maybe you missed and didn't think about, and maybe you can fill in some missing pieces, or maybe they have all the pieces and you're like, wow, what do I owe you for this? Because I feel really indebted to your work and service in this matter, my life. I think I'll have to name my next child after whoever all did this. So, okay. This is where you're headed, is toward this very person that's holding on to things very tightly. This could be a person or the resources, but whoever this is, they're holding on to things very tightly. They're not surrendering anything. Now, you all know that what you're not surrendering is secret in some sense. And I talked about 12th house Pisces. My gift with secrets is I am a walking secret. That's just, my son was in the 12th house when I was born. So I just attract them. I am one, I guess you would say. But something needs to be unlocked with this position, because I feel like wherever you're headed, even though it's a resource or a person, there's something that they're not letting go of, and maybe you can help them let go of it. This walking toward this baptism by fire kind of, you know, like, look, you can do this, like you can surrender, or this can be like even more painful kind of vibe, you know what I mean? because you're here to do what God wants you to do, because you've learned the hard way that that's the best way, and you fell in love with it in the process. So it's not like it's burdening you. It's not a burden to you to do this. Okay, this is something you were meant to do. So people are looking at you. People are looking at you. Great. They think you look like death. That's great. I survived it. Death gifted me life. So if they think you look like death, that's okay, right? Because we all know it's a continuous cycle. Have you ever noticed, like, when someone passes away in your family, that, like, the next year someone will be pregnant? It's like this continuous cycle of I'm replacing the family, right? I'm replacing the legacy. So I feel like there's been a lot of deaths and rebirths, and some have been physical, some have been mental, some have been emotional, but regardless, they recognize this around you, that there's a lot of this going around. Someone's here. Oh. Hi.
We just painted parking spots.
You just what?
We painted parking spots.
Oh.
Look at what I did.
Oh.
That's Z and I. We both own BMWs.
That looks so good. Is Zine here?
No, that's Austin.
Oh, hi, Austin. That looks really badass.
And then that's we put all our names.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you have to send that to my phone.
I will.
My son's graduating, so that's his. They paint on the pavement when they're graduating. So, yeah. Good heart. Good heart. He doesn't believe all this God stuff, but he's got a good heart. So I'm almost there. I'm like really close. We'll see. Okay. Never give up on your kids. But yeah, even if you don't raise your kids in like religion, at least teach them bad and good. At least teach them right and wrong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, and nothing against my parents, but I felt like they didn't really, and maybe we don't do this as parents, but I always made it a real point, like, okay, don't, just examples of what's right and what's wrong, because you don't want to feel like that person, so don't treat them that, you know what I mean? Like, you hate it when you feel a certain way. You hate it when you feel hurt or rejected, or so don't make that person feel like that, because you don't want to feel like that. So just easy things like that to like help them understand that, oh, that I do this because it's the right thing to do or the good thing to do or what have you. But yeah, a lot of religions right now are kind of pissed off at this whole collective thing, like thinking it's just this, and it's just such a beautiful movement, because it's just teaching people like, look, love is going to solve a lot more problems than hate. And the religious people are the Sadducees, the Pharisees, all these people, and I mean, it's been in the Bible. They really condemned people like Jesus. They wanted to crucify him. They crucified him because, look, whatever you're sending, whatever wisdom and words that you think, we don't accept it. Well, that's not going to fly now because the planets are lined up. So, yo, he did this for a reason. He's telling you, look, I've done all I can in the universe to get this message out, and you guys are my warriors. So you either keep getting up and putting these messages out, or the earth as we know it is going to be strangely gone. We don't want that, right? At least not until we get through this trip through Earth, right? Or for our kids especially too. Anyway, so hopes and fears. You're hoping you're getting the right words together. You're hoping you're using what God's gifted you with to do that efficiently, and I guess seriously, I want anything that sticks, that it'll stick. Sometimes somebody can say something to you 20 years ago and you still remember it. I want it to be like that, because it's that important. You don't have to listen to everything, but it's just going to be that one thing that's going to make you change. You know, and people say, well, there's no God because look at, you know, kids with cancer and the famine, and there's no God. Look at, like, a good loving God would never do that. This is what Spirit, when I was asking Spirit about that, because that's what Spirit was telling me, that moment where they held that child with cancer, or held that child that couldn't see or couldn't hear, was a moment that softened a heart, and maybe that's what that condition is here for, because you never know when it's going to soften a heart and change choices. So those angels that signed up for that, to come in early and leave, or come in and then leave early, you know, children that die, that there was a reason for that. And even when I've asked my spirits, like, hey, you know, why did so-and-so pass away? They're like, that was meant to be. Look, my throat chakra. Somebody doesn't like this message. You know what, Satan? Screw off. Because you know it's the truth. That's how we're defeating you, is love. So just melt, wax person, just melt. What does that mean? No, he's like, I love you. I know, I love you too. This is the ending result. This King of Cups. This is probably someone who's carried some swords for you, to tell you the truth. They probably brought in a lot of justice for you, collective. So be gentle with this person.
So we have graduation rehearsal at like 12:30, and then we get off at 2 or whatever.
Okay.
So
All
I'm
right.
probably gonna go to his house though for the night.
All right. I love you. Be careful.
I'll send you those pictures though.
Okay. All right. See you later.
Love you.
Love you. So that's the end result.
I'm taking the cookies from the drum.
Okay. Got it. That's where you want to end the reading, is with this King of Cups. In the high vibration, this guy is probably kick-ass. In the low vibration, he doesn't like to feel powerless. He doesn't like to feel weak, just because he shows love, right? So in a low vibration, this person can be kind of vindictive if he feels that he's been, and that, you know what? None of us are weak and powerless, and we know where I am, and you can stand in that, especially if you're following the light. So, bug zappers, have an awesome day. Looks like everyone else is about to, so I better get out there. I love you. Bye.